Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Wow, Thursday, December 19th, 2019. Soon we will be saying 2020. Hard to imagine, but that is true. If someone had told me that I would be alive, let alone doing podcasts and other things in the year 2020, I would say, yeah, right, sure. And, yeah, the Easter Bunny's real or something. Yeah. But here we are. And I hope you're having a great end of the year. I know it's a busy time of year. But welcome to Pondering, the show where we ponder all things, we think them through, and we talk about them. We have no holds barred. We do not hold back. And we do it from a biblical perspective. Again, unashamedly, unabashedly, and unapologetically biblical, Christian worldview perspective. Because we think that our faith should inform and direct all that we do. And therefore, we don't check our faith at the door. We don't check our brains at the door. We don't accept just the sound bites and swallow them. We actually think things through and we consider them. Every weekday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the Pondering Radio page of Facebook. And that's one of the ways you can contribute to the show. If you're listening via podcast on Spreaker or iHeartRadio or wherever, we welcome you and encourage you to share your thoughts and ideas and comments with us. You can do that, again, in several ways. You can go to the Pondering Radio page on Facebook, if in fact you have a Facebook account. You can comment there 24/7, 365. Of course, if you're watching live, you can jump right into the live stream here and make comments. You can call us at 860-500-7163. You can leave a message there 24/7, 365. Again, 860-500-7163. Or you can email anytime, ponderingradio, like one big word, ponderingradio@gmail.com. And I'm your host, Joel Rissinger. I want to talk today about a few things, just kind of chit-chat a little bit as we look at some of the craziness in our world around us today. I am saddened by the foolishness, and I am not the only one that would say it that way. In fact, this seems to be more and more understood and agreed upon across even various party lines, although I'm an independent. Certainly Republicans, for the most part, would agree with what I'm about to say, as are and would many Democrats, and that is that the impeachment of President Trump in the House of Representatives yesterday was an absolute horrific, silly, embarrassing, I wouldn't even go so far as to say unconstitutional, cowardly act from a bunch of folks on the liberal extreme end of the party, their party, the Democratic Party, who just can't get over the fact that President Trump won the last election, and they're trying to make sure he doesn't win the next one. There was no facts, no support, no rational argument for high crimes and misdemeanors, which are supposed to be the basis of an impeachment. But they did it anyway. They just did it. And they spun it and tried to make it sound like they had rational ideas, but when they were questioned and when there were open arguments made, they had no answers. There just is no basis. At the end of the day, what happened was they impeached President Trump for looking into something that wasn't just about Joe Biden. That's what they've said. He's looking into a political opponent, using the powers of the president for his own good to ensure his reelection. Well, the fact of the matter is he looked into Joe Biden for doing what they've accused President Trump of doing. And there are facts, including Joe Biden's own admission, Vice President Biden's admission of him doing that publicly. It's on video. I've seen it. That basically show that he did, in fact, bribe, at the time, the president of Ukraine to fire a political figure, well, specifically the Attorney General of the Ukraine, for looking into the company that employed Joe Biden's son, after Joe Biden, of course, pulled strings to get his son the job, making $86,000 a month for basically doing nothing, being on a board, but not even having to be present and having no expertise in the field. He got the job. He's in the job. There's corruption in the company. Apparently, the Attorney General of the country of Ukraine starts to look into it, and then Joe Biden tells the president to fire him, president of Ukraine, to fire him, or else he'll withhold $300 million worth of aid. And they did withhold the aid, and the president did fire the guy. And then when they ended up giving aid, all they gave him was some blankets and supplies. They did not give him any military aid when Russia invaded and took over Crimea, about a third of the territory of the Ukraine. And these are all facts. Everything I just said is a fact. It's absolutely documented. Joe Biden then bragged publicly about getting this guy fired. And in the stream of consciousness, President Trump's conversation with the president of Ukraine, now a few years later, he says, look into corruption, look into this company that supposedly took the computers from the Democratic National Committee and claimed that Russia hacked those computers during the last election. Look into that, because I'm not sure that's true. See if you can find out more. And look into the Biden thing, because that seems corrupt. Look into corruption in general. And the Democrats have now impeached the president, saying the only reason he mentioned Biden, and of course they ignore all the rest of that, they don't talk about that, is because he was trying to ruin his chances of becoming president. Well, first of all, Joe Biden has not won the Democratic nomination yet. In fact, many scholars believe, people who are political hacks and study this stuff, that he's not going to get the nomination. That he doesn't really have a chance to, because he's too old and forgets things and has too many gaffes, and that someone else is likely, probably Elizabeth Warren, many would say, to get that nomination, and he will be out. So if President Trump was trying to stop him, it's a little premature, because he hasn't even won the nomination yet. He may not even be President Trump's opponent. But even if President Trump was trying to stop him, even if it was completely politically motivated, you'd have to ignore the other things he had the Ukraine look into, the president of Ukraine look into. But let's just say we ignore those, and we say the only reason President Trump asked the president of Ukraine to look into Joe Biden and his son was because he's trying to stop Joe Biden from competing against him as president, because for some reason he's terrified of running against Joe Biden. And let's just say that was true. Let's say we assume all of that is true. It's not illegal. It's not illegal for a president to ask another president of another country, in the presence of many witnesses, that's why we have the transcript of the entire call, to look into corruption involving somebody else who happens to be running for president. Now, if he had a motivation of just being selfish, okay, that's not a good motivation, but it's not illegal. It's not an impeachable offense. A president can have a president of another country or our FBI look into anyone he thinks might be involved in corruption, whether they're running for president or dog catcher, or not running for anything except the bus. It's not illegal. It's not unconstitutional. It's not inappropriate. Anyone he thinks is a threat to national security, that what they've done has compromised us or is an illegal act, such as Joe Biden's would have been, he has the right to ask questions and ask people to look at it and find out. Get the facts. Totally legal, but he's impeached for it. And then he was impeached secondly for obstruction of justice or obstruction of Congress, obstruction, not listening, not cooperating, contempt of Congress, I think is what they said, because he commanded people in his cabinet not to bother appearing before Congress. They refused to turn over documents. He stopped cooperating. Well, why did he stop cooperating? Because every time they had cooperated, everything they had given him, they ended up just either dismissing it or trying to turn things around and spin it. The president does not have to report to Congress. The president is in a separate, distinct branch of government that's supposed to provide a check and balance against Congress, just as Congress is to him. Congress does to him. His obstruction was based on the folly of the Russia investigation, which the Mueller report proved was folly, and he does not have to go there and answer their questions. But they're impeaching him for it anyway. So, sad day in that sense. However, you know, all things work to the good of those called according to his purpose, we're told, right? So sometimes the worst days become the best days. And I suspect, and polls are indicating this, President's approval numbers are climbing, even though he's impeached. People are bailing out of the Democratic Party because they see this as folly and deception and inappropriate abuse of their power. And this may actually solidify and guarantee the president a win in the next election. It may, in fact, create an entire turnover in Congress, which Democrat and Republican alike, I'd love to see a complete turnover. I think it's a mess. So who knows? That may be the positive result. Most people agree that the impeachment will not go very far in the Senate. It'll just be dismissed as silliness, which it is, and then we'll move on. But I think it's sad that we are at a place in our country where so many people do believe the lies that are spewed. And it is also sad to me that we have such corruption in the FBI. And I've watched these trials, and I've listened to the testimony, and I've read and listened to reports and interviews with people on both sides of this issue, and I look at it and think, wow, the FBI has become a corrupt extension of the power base, the established power base. President Trump calls it the swamp in Washington. Used to be, you looked at the FBI and you thought, wow, there's a respected organization. We can trust them, and if they're involved, man, we're going to get to the truth. No more can we say that. The upper echelons, at least. I'm not talking about the individual field agents in every case, maybe not even in most cases, but the upper levels, it has become so corrupt and so twisted, and it is so abused, misused by those in power to take out people who happen to disagree with the progressive, liberal, socialist agenda. And it's just a frightening thing to think about. Never thought I'd see that day. The corruption of the media. You know, I grew up wanting, at one point in my life, to be part of the media. You know, I was a journalist in college. I wrote my way through my last 2 years of college, working for college paper, college publications, and a Christian publisher. And I thought that I might want to be a news reporter. I love going out and getting the scoop. And we used to joke about it in the office all the time. Go get the scoop, Joel, get the scoop. Because I would just beat down doors to get a story. I loved it. And now I look at the vast majority of mass media and all the major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, and they are a disaster. And when I say that, I mean they don't uphold any of the journalistic principles I was taught in classes or by the people I work for. They are editorializing 90% of the time, not reporting straight news, the facts. The choice of words in their verbal reports and their written reports are charged, emotionally charged, and biased. And I don't trust anything I hear now. I mean, even the simplest little thing, a story about a fire in Springfield, I will question it. or something, there's an accident in Hartford, they report on it. I question it because they always seem to have an agenda, and they're unashamedly willing to promote that agenda in the midst of any story and to editorialize, to ask questions that support a point of view that they've already come to and determined. They don't wait for the facts to unfold and then come to a conclusion, or just present them and let the audience, the reader, the listener, the viewer decide for him or herself, right? Decide for themselves what's right, what's wrong, or what's true, or what the conclusions are. No, they don't do that. They come to a conclusion, and they present just the facts that support that conclusion. And I've seen this coming. I've had the chance to be interviewed in the past by different ones, different reasons. When our governor stepped down here in Connecticut, I had some exposure to him and to Pastor Will, who had led him to Christ. And so I was interviewed around that time a few times, and there were some stories done about Will, and I was interviewed in that case. And there have been little miscellaneous things over the years. There was a woman who had attended our church who had a psychotic break and took the whole FBI and state police and everybody else on a wild goose chase. And I was able to intervene and let them know that, in fact, she had mental issues, PTSD, etc. And this was, she probably shouldn't be jailed for life for what she did, etc. And, those times I've had a chance to connect with different ones in the media. And I can tell you, and even stuff locally with the church, they want to interview about different events and stuff. I have watched slowly this turn toward editorializing, bias. We report what we think and only the facts that support that. And it's a frightening thing now to think that I can't trust the source of information that I used to look to every night. My family would gather around the TV after supper, and we would watch the news with Walter Cronkite. And I remember, trusting that guy, everything he said. And at the end of the program, he would say, and that's the way it was. Thursday, December 19th, 2019. I'm Walter Cronkite. Good night. And we would think, okay, now we know what's happening in the world. We're up to date. We're informed, right? No longer can we say that by watching the mainstream media. We can say, well, we know one side of the story. We know half the story. We may have, even in the midst of that, things that aren't true. How many times have, has the New York Times and CNN and others been caught in the last year or two and having to come back and publish a correction because somebody called them on a lie, flat-out lie, made-up story, made up witnesses, made up everything, and they've had to, post a retraction. And so we've watched the FBI, we've watched the media, we've watched other sources and institutions that we trusted in, Congress itself, certainly now the House of Representatives. We've watched them fall from grace, watched them fall from that trusted spot of places, the people we could look to for information, for truth, for justice. We've seen the courts, in many cases, go liberal, as many liberal, progressive, socialists, I dare even say communist, because they're not too far apart, those two, last two, judges who were appointed by President Obama and others. And they make decisions, whether we're talking about abortion, whether we're talking about Obamacare, forcing people to buy insurance from the government, or from selected organizations supported by the government. Whatever it is we're looking at, we see the courts, too, in many cases, being corrupt. And it's a sad time, except for this. And here's the caveat to everything I've just said. You're probably thinking, wow, this is depressing. Thanks so much, Pastor Joel. Appreciate being able to tune in and hear that today. But here's the caveat. Here's the good news. We serve the King of Kings. He is not controlled by or under the authority of Congress. He's not influenced by the reports of the media. The FBI has no jurisdiction over him and his will and his work, nor does the rest of the Justice Department or the court system. No, in fact, he is on the throne above all, over the universe itself. And we serve him as ambassadors for him, and we're part of his kingdom first, and this country and its structure second. And as much as I love our nation, and I'm proud to wear hats like this with a flag on it, even though it's a little worse for wear, the kingdom of God is first. The King of Kings is in control. And the fact is that no matter what institutions crumble, fall apart, his kingdom will never fail. In fact, the expanding nature of his kingdom will continue. Of the increase of his government, Isaiah wrote, there is no end. He continues. And at this season, as we celebrate his arrival, we can hang on to that, can't we? We can hang on to the reality that the increase of his government, his kingdom, there will be no end. And he is in charge, and he is not worried about a thing. So as we watch this, we watch it with a bit of sadness, but at the same time with hope, because we know that at the end of the day, what comes is the kingdom of God in its fullness and the rule forever and ever of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So take heart in that. Stand on that as you watch this craziness unfold. And even in the short-term sense of what our government's going through, don't be surprised if what was intended for harm, impeaching the president, making up lies and distortions on all kinds of issues and trying to promote an agenda that is ultimately globalist, that leads to a one-world government. And then we know from the book of Revelation that's going to happen eventually. But in the meantime, I'm not sure we're there yet. And what they have been doing and what they've been promoting may actually backfire. And there's a real good chance in 2020 that that's exactly what's going to happen. So wait and see, but regardless, look above that fray to the one in charge of all things, the one we trust in, the one who gave his life for us. So, God bless you guys. Those are my thoughts for today, Thursday, December 19th, 2019. I'm not Walter Cronkite. Good night. Stay in the Word, keep praying, keep pondering. Tell your friends and others about the show. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 7:30. Until then, God bless you guys. Bye for now.